are live. Welcome in, everybody. We got a 5-game slate to break down tonight. And we got some news coming out. LeBron James is now listed as out. Biggest news on the slate. So, of course, that's going to change some things with the Lakers side of things. If you watched my video earlier, I was talking a lot about how I didn't really have much interest in this Lakers side because all the usage is being so condensed, especially on DraftKings. They're priced way up, but that has since changed, obviously, with LeBron being out. That's pretty big news. Anthony Davis and Russell Westbrook are both going to receive pretty big bumps. So that's certainly relevant news. And then as far as anyone else on this slate, another thing is my lock of the night earlier was Hassan Whiteside, and supposedly there was a false report coming out that Rudy Gobert was going to be out. They actually meant it was about Rudy Gay, and that's obviously going to impact things where Hassan Whiteside is not my lock of the night. So that's a little bit unfortunate because I already kind of put that out into the universe, but you can't really do anything about false reporting. So, yeah, I mean, obviously with Rudy Gobert being in, Hassan Whiteside is not nearly as good of a play. I'm hoping that people kind of acknowledge that on their own. But if you're here and you're listening and you didn't know, probably not the smartest to be playing Hassan Whiteside now. So apologies for that. But that just happens sometimes. I can't do anything about false reporting, so I'm just gonna tell you right now, Hassan Whiteside's not exactly going to be the best play now. It's obviously a much different dynamic with Rudy Gobert being in there. So, all right, looks like we got some people filing in here. What's up, KJK? Patrick, how we doing? Colin, what's going on, man? Garza says, who's your lock now? I really don't know, man. I don't really typically come up with a new lock because usually my locks are pretty on point. So we'll talk along the slate here, and as we go, maybe I'll come up with a lock on the fly for you guys. I'm sure we can do that as the news is coming out and everything that I like on both sites. Even if it's not technically my lock, you'll get an idea of who I'm really liking on this slate. So I'll make sure you're covered. Don't worry. So yeah, let's do a little bit of a game by game here. As comments are coming in, I'll be answering some questions. And Colin right away gets to something I actually had on my list, which is KJ Martin. Yeah, Colin, I was actually doing a little bit of a dig into KJ Martin. And I think I'm liking him quite a bit here, especially when you're factoring in the big spread. Interested to see his ownership. And he's certainly one I'm going to be looking into. So we'll get there, but good points being made already. So, Philly taking on Detroit. Joel Embiid is listed as questionable. He is more so probable. That news just came out. I just saw it come through my feed. So, rest, he is probable. We also are waiting on some Furkan Korkmaz news. So, he was a guy that got a big bump up yesterday. That's actually listed as questionable. And we just got another piece of news that Bogdan Bogdanovic is now listed as questionable as well. So, obviously, if there is no Bogdan Bogdanovic, that's going to open up even more usage on the Atlanta side of things. And you got to make sure you're referring to the right Bogdanovic. There's Bogdan and there's Bojan. It's Bogdan that is questionable. So that's going to impact the Atlanta side of things, not the Utah side of things. Make sure that you're not clicking on the wrong names, getting those guys confused. It is indeed Bogdan that is listed as questionable. And so, yeah, that's another piece of news that just came through. But anyways, back to a little bit of the game by game. Philly taking on Detroit. Yeah, Joel Embiid listed as questionable, but he is more so probable. He's expected to be in. The biggest news would be Furkan Korkmaz. He's listed as questionable. If he's out, Danny Green and Tobias Harris continue to be out as well. So that's just going to open up even more minutes, more usage for Shake Milton and Georges Niang, who's been playing very effectively. And both those guys will become much better plays. So that's certainly big news because Shake Milton's only 3.9 on DraftKings. And, he'd get a big bump up. A guy that we've been playing quite a bit in DFS when he gets an opportunity to climb in and get a bigger role. He produces at a pretty high rate. So Shake Milton's a guy that would certainly be making some sense to me for sure tonight if that is the case. And for Furkan Korkmaz is ruled out. Shake Milton currently putting up 1.02 DK points per minute on a per-minute basis. So, yeah, certainly would become a much better play. Would Shake Milton if there is no Furkan Korkmaz out. And that's going to impact the rest of the Philadelphia rotation. Joel Embiid is going to continue to be an absolute usage beast. I really liked him last night. Unfortunately, he really let us down. He went out there for 34 minutes. The game stayed tight. 9 rebounds, 7 assists, 18 points. Decent game overall, but I mean, for his price tag, he just didn't get the job done. I'm going to like him a lot again tonight, but things certainly got a lot more interesting with LeBron being ruled out, because that's going to make Anthony Davis a much more intriguing play as well. So you can make an argument that you might want to go AD over Joel Embiid, possibly, at their respective price tags. And dare I say out loud, Anthony Davis not quite dealing with as much injury issues early on as Joel Embiid, but they both kind of go hand in hand in that category. So no promises on that going too smoothly for you. But yeah, Joel Embiid, the usage is still going to be there. The other counter argument you can make is the pace in this game is going to be really, really slow. It's only a 208 over-under. That's going to be the slowest game by far on the slate. But if you take out Furkan Korkmaz, that's going to just increase even more to Joel Embiid. Not that Korkmaz is like the most highest dominant usage guy in the world, but it's just like you can only take so many bodies off the floor before it just becomes increasingly even more important that you're targeting Joel Embiid in your tournament lineups, and his ceiling just keeps going up. So that's certainly something to be looking on. And then, of course, the guys in the mid-range, Seth Curry, Tyrese Maxey, they were already getting minutes as is. They're going to continue to see their big minutes, mid-30s minutes. And with these guys being out on the Philly side, they're going to continue to get more usage. Tyrese Maxey has been real disappointing so far in the season from a fantasy point upside. He's only put up 24, 22, and 24 points. I tend to think it's just a matter of time before he has a big game. He's usually a lot better than this, so hopefully sooner rather than later, Tyrese Maxey can step up to the plate here and have a big game, but so far he's not really showing. And then on the Detroit side, it's pretty straightforward as far as who you're looking to target for the most part. It's going to be Jeremiah Grant, Sadiq Bey, and the young rookie and Cade Cunningham's also a guy that continues to be underpriced if he can finally get his act together. He's had some rough shooting nights, but he still just continues to be underpriced across the industry. He's only 4K on DraftKings, and he's still standing out to me from a projection aspect in this game. The next guy would be Isaiah Stewart as well at 4.6 on the Detroit side that you could be looking to, and Kelly Olynyk as well at his 5.1 price tag, which, to be honest with you, based upon their price tags and their upside, those two guys are actually standing out to me quite a bit. But we've seen Kelly Olynyk's minutes get cut back pretty significantly last time out, and as far as Isaiah Stewart's concerned, kind of the same thing. So that's where my concern would be, their minutes. I just feel like I'd feel a little bit more comfortable going with guys like a Jeremiah Grant, like a Sadiq Bey, like a Cade Cunningham. But you also got to factor in both those games were blowouts. So I'm kind of thinking it was just the blowouts that are kind of impacting these minutes. And maybe some other people will be scared off these guys, and you don't have to be. And then the blowouts, they'll actually get their 30 minutes or so, and you'll be looking really good in your tournaments. Because, I mean, for the time being, I do have Isaiah Stewart and his fellow guy in the front court in Kelly Olynyk projected for mid-20s minutes or so, which would be enough to get the job done at their respective price tags. So, but Cade Cunningham, by far, going to be the main guy. I mean, 4K just continues to be underpriced. He shot absolutely terrible last time out. It's just a matter of fact before this guy can get some shots to fall. Coach Dwayne Casey was commenting on it. I just saw a few reports on what's going on with him, and he just said he's just trying to get back into the swing of things. He missed camp. He's just starting to get into practice. He's got a few games under his belt now, so I wouldn't think that Cade Cunningham's going to have too hard of a time surpassing this 4K price tag eventually. He's only put up 14 and 12 DraftKings points the first 2 times out. But like I said, you would tend to think it's just a matter of time before he's able to go out there and actually produce at a pretty high rate. Right now, I've got him projected for a little over 20 DraftKings points, and he's only putting up 0.56 DK points per minute on the season so far. Once again, I would tend to think Cade Cunningham is going to be more than a 0.56 DK point per minute producer, I would hope, with that first overall pick. And I've watched him play. He's just missing shots. He's getting open. He looks good off the dribble, all that stuff. He's just missing shots. But that's just bottom line. You got to put the ball in the bucket, and Cade Cunningham's been struggling with that so far. So I think it's just a matter of time before he has a big game here. And that's certainly what I'd be looking to. Caven says, should I trade Bradley Beal and Donovan Mitchell for Chris Paul, John Collins, OG Anunoby, Scotty Barnes? I don't know. I don't really give out too much season-long advice on this channel, man. Looking at that from a first glaze aspect, I would say no. I mean, You have two on-ball heavy dominant guards in Bradley Beal and Donovan Mitchell that both have tremendous upside on any given night for their teams. I mean, I know you're getting like multiple good players back, but I tend to think you're probably better off sticking with your two studs there. So, all right, next game on the slate. We got Utah taking on Atlanta. We just received a little bit of news on there as far as Bogdan Bogdanovic. He's now listed as questionable in this one. So if he's out, look for that to shake things up in the rotation a bit. And John Collins is also listed as questionable in this one. If he's out, it's going to be Danilo Gallinari, Solomon Hill seeing more minutes as well. So the Atlanta side, we're certainly waiting on some news that could shake up the rotation. Clint Capella at 7-2. On a back-to-back, he did see his minutes limited in the early season, so I'm interested to see how they're going to treat him on back-to-backs. I don't think he's played a back-to-back yet on the season so far, so... Well, 27th and 28th here, you can see he played back-to-back, but at that point, he played 29 minutes in the first half and 23 minutes on the second leg of that back-to-back, so that's a little bit concerning to me. Could see his minutes go down a little bit in this one, so that's something to keep an eye on. We got to wait on the Donovan Mitchell news as well. That's obviously big news. If he's out, that's going to be a big increase in usage too. A Mike Conley, a Bojan Bogdanovic, a Jordan Clarkson off the bench as the sixth man. I'd like him a lot more in this one. And you get a little bit of a, usage bump up to all those guys, as well as Joe Ingles at 4-6. These guys would all become more prominent plays if there is indeed no Donovan Mitchell in this one. And I will say Donovan Mitchell's been soaking up a lot of the usage early on in the season, taking a lot of shots, 30 shots last time out against Sacramento. And if he's not on the floor, it'd be nice for those 30 shots to be able to get dispersed a little bit elsewhere. There's been a few games this year where I've tried to target these Utah Jazz guys that aren't Donovan Mitchell because they're a little underpriced, and I just feel like Donovan Mitchell will be passing the ball to them, spreading the wealth around, and he's overpriced and they're underpriced. That just has not been the case. Donovan Mitchell has been really aggressive and really taking a lot of shots and really using up a lot of the offense's opportunities through his own hands. So that's very big news, and that'll certainly impact the usage big time on the Utah side of things. So until we get the news on that, we can't quite elaborate any further. Then we have Cam Reddish and Danilo Gallinari and all these Atlanta guys. Like I said, if there is no Bogdanovic on the Atlanta side of things, that would certainly shake things up there. Boston taking on Miami, third game on the slate. This game features two teams that are both really healthy. So as far as the Boston and Miami side, I mean, both teams pretty deep. Both teams offer lots of guys that have good value as far as their fantasy point per minute value, but we're dealing with a lot of share in usage, and I think that might be a little bit concerning when we now have LeBron James ruled us out. We're going to have Russell Westbrook and Anthony Davis receiving a lot more usage. We already know the Philadelphia team's a little bit depleted. We're going to have Joel Embiid receiving a lot of usage. So do I really want to go down to a guy like a Jason Tatum or Jimmy Butler or Jaylen Brown in this spot? I mean, of course, it's going to depend upon your roster build and as we're building along here, but I tend to think, I'm not going to be too intrigued. Robert Williams continues to grade out as a tremendous play for me at his price tag every single night. He just produces at a very high rate, and he continues to be underpriced here, so he's the guy that's probably standing out to me the most in this game. But even with that being said, I do think that with Al Horford being in there, it is impacting his rebound upside. We've seen Al Horford grab 10-plus rebounds every single time out. The last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games. Every game he's been in, he's been grabbing double-digit rebounds. And then when you go down to Robert Williams, he is priced at a much friendlier rate, but obviously, the last 2 games he's only grabbed 5 rebounds, 6 rebounds. So it's impacting him pretty negatively here. But before that, we did see him put up 44 and 39 DraftKings points. So I think it's possible on the 25th and the 27th. And when you go to Al Horford, as far as if he was in those games and how he fared, he was able to have pretty big games in those games as well. So it's possible for them both to have big games. They've gone out and shown it. And I do like Robert Williams' price tag much more than Al Horford's. Al Horford continues to be priced up a lot more than Robert Williams, so that would be why Robert Williams is popping in my model for sure. And I think I'm just going to have to continue to play him because he just has too much upside for that price tag, and that's tournament-winning upside. A guy that's priced that cheap will certainly be an interesting play for me. And the one guy I forgot to talk about in that last game in the Atlanta side that I do want to make sure I bring up is DeAndre Hunter. With that news of Bogdanovic being listed as questionable in this one, that's obviously going to be, even more of a bump to Hunter, and he's been playing big minutes as is. Last time out, seeing 33 minutes, 33.5 DraftKings points. He's only 4K on DraftKings. That's really going to stand out to me. As far as FanDuel's concerned, if he's really standing out, let's see. Well, Bogdanovic is still ruled as in my projection, so obviously that's going to impact things a little bit, so he's not quite standing out quite as much over there, but that could change for sure based on that news that we're receiving, and I would certainly like him a lot more. But yeah, Boston, Miami. We know Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo are the main candidates. Kyle Lowry on FanDuel specifically is just way too cheap. I talked about that in my earlier video, so he's definitely standing out to me on FanDuel specifically because he's only 5'9". I mean, that's just a ridiculously cheap price tag for a guy like Kyle Lowry that offers the kind of upside that he offers, and I'm certainly going to have interest in him. And Mike Conley's also a guy that's very underpriced over here on FanDuel at only 5'2". So if you're playing on FanDuel, those are two guys that are really standing out to me. Mike Conley, Kyle Lowry. Of course, if we get the news that Donovan Mitchell's out, Mike Conley's going to look like an even better play. So certainly keep your eyes on that news. And we will have to determine from there. Let's see. Latest news. Joel Embiid intends to play, but is a game-time decision. Because, of course, that's the latest report. Because why wouldn't it be? It can't be easy, guys. Come on. We got to be at our computers until midnight when the game starts at 7 to see if he's in. That's just how this stuff works. NBA, baby. Yeah, that's some of the news we're waiting on. Let's see. We're talking about the Bogdanovic news. Kyle Lowry underpriced on FanDuel I talked about. Boston, Miami. Both teams are really healthy. Kind of tough to be going here. I continue to like Bam Adebayo on DraftKings, where I think he just continues to be underpriced, so he'd probably be my favorite option from this game right now. And is my favorite option currently at his 8-1 price tag. So Bam Adebayo, no issues with going to him. And then when you factor in the fact that the Celtics front court is pretty big in having Robert Williams and Al Horford out there, Bam Adebayo's services are definitely going to be needed. I'm sure he's going to be sticking in the game, so I certainly do like some Bam Adebayo tonight. And he'd probably be my favorite play. Well, not probably. He is my favorite play from this game, in this Boston-Miami game, with these guys being fully healthy. We have some other games that we are dealing with some injury news. Houston taking on Phoenix. We're still waiting on this DeAndre Ayton news. That's the other big piece of news on this slate. JaVale McGee and Frank Kaminsky will see more minutes. Last time out, it was really Frank Kaminsky that had the biggest game of the two. And it'd be interesting to see the ownership on Kaminsky and JaVale McGee if this is the case, because I wonder if people are going to overreact or what the case may be. So, Polar B Poppin 11 asks thoughts on Green, Giddey, Korkmaz, AD, Gobert, Rondo, Tate, KPJ. Sounds decent. I mean, I do like Giddey quite a bit. We'll get there when we get there, but I'm not sure why you're loading up so much on like Gobert and those Houston guys. I think there's some other options we'll get to that I like a little bit more. There's no LeBron James, so Russell Westbrook, Anthony Davis, I think are going to be great plays. You do have him in your lineup. And then I'm not too sure that I'd be looking to go to Rudy Gobert in this particular spot, but he has been very good. I don't know. I don't want to talk you off Gobert. He's definitely a decent play, but I'm just not sure with my builds I'd be looking to go there. But I'll have more of an answer as we go along the slate. We're still waiting on some news to be coming out as well. So, let's see. Okay, so Houston taking on Phoenix. It's really obvious as far as whether you should just go in here, especially if Aiden's out. It's going to be Devin Booker and Chris Paul on the Phoenix side. As far as this game's total and everything, could possibly blow out. The Suns do have a 10.5 point spread right now. Only a 219.5 over-under for this game, but I mean, all these games early on in the early going have been low totals. The Utah Jazz Atlanta Hawks game, it seems to be the friendliest game environment on this slate, and that's only a 220 over-under. So, and then on the Lakers and Oklahoma City side of things, with there being no LeBron, it's still an 11-point spread in favor of the Lakers. So, both of these late games, the 10 and 10-30 game, have large spreads, could turn into blowouts, and for that reason, it's a little bit sketchy. You could maybe take advantage of some guys that you know are going to get blowout run in both of these games, if that's going to be the case. So, talking about if the DeAndre Ayton's out, maybe we could see a Frank Kaminsky go out there and get a bunch of run at only 3.5 and really put up a big game. He put up 35 DraftKings points last time out. Already had someone in the chat asking about KJ Martin, and I certainly do like KJ Martin quite a bit right now from what I'm looking at in my projections on DraftKings specifically. He's grading out as a very good play. And he's a perfect example of a guy that, if this game turns into a blowout, he's a young guy that Houston's trying to develop. They really want to get him more minutes to continue to develop him. So even if it does turn to a blowout, I feel like his minutes will still be there. So he's like the perfect example. I feel like it's a win-win situation with him because I think he'll get minutes if they're in the game. And if they start to get behind, I think they'll still leave him out there for quite a bit. So that's kind of what my approach would be with these late games, looking for guys in those situations that will continue to get minutes. I think Sagan is another guy that's in that same realm of possibilities here. And he's priced at 4-1. So he's another guy I'd be looking to that could possibly continue to see some run if this game turns into a blowout and could have a big game. And so far, he's producing at a very high rate, putting up 1.08 DK points per minute through 7 games, 139 minutes. So I'm certainly going to be having interest in those two guys. Coming off the bench, if this game turns into a blowout, they could certainly be having some big, big games for you. So those two guys are standing out to me on the Houston side of things. If the game's going to stay close, it's probably going to come on the hands of Christian Wood and Kevin Porter Jr. So those two guys obviously have the biggest upside on the Houston side, but it's not as if they're grading out too good to me. Eric Gordon would be my favorite option in this game right now from an upside aspect as far as the guys that have solidified minutes. He's 4-7 on DraftKings. I think you can surpass that price tag pretty easily here after seeing 30 minutes last time out, putting up 27 DraftKings points. Is really reliant as a shooter from the 3-ball, but on DraftKings where you get that bonus for 3-pointers, we have no issues with playing some Eric Gordon in our lineups because he's underpriced. He can certainly get you there. And like I said, they're going to need some scoring. It's a 10.5-point spread. If they're going to stay in this game, Houston, they're going to definitely need his scoring. So he would be another guy that I think is underpriced on DraftKings that you could certainly be playing in your lineups in this one. And then like I talked about, Sagan and KJ Martin are both guys that are really intriguing to me. If this game turns into a blowout, I think they could really surpass their price tags for you in tournaments when guys like Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green probably get pulled off the court. But, you know, not a guarantee this is going to be a blowout, so you can't just play your lineups banking on that. But if you're a tournament player such as myself, I think it's smart to be taking some risks, maybe playing some lineups like that, maybe surpassing you past the field. And, of course, we're waiting on this DeAndre Ayton news. That's going to be big. That'll get a bump up to Jay Crowder and Mikal Bridges as well as JaVale McGee and Frank Kaminsky. So Jay Crowder and Mikal Bridges would become much better plays for me if we do get confirmation on that as well. So we're waiting on that news. And the last game, the Oklahoma City taking on the LA Lakers. We already got confirmation that LeBron's out. Biggest news on the slate by far. I talked about on my video earlier, I really didn't have any interest on these Lakers. That has since changed because that's a big piece of news there. Russell Westbrook and Anthony Davis become big priorities for me. These guys are going to have huge ceilings now in the late game. Oklahoma City has been absolutely terrible in all aspects of the game. They do not scare me whatsoever. Looking at my Patreon premium content to give you guys a little bit of a hint as far as my defensive half-court and putbacks tool. As far as their offensive rebounding rank, they rank 19th overall, allowing many offensive rebounds. Half-court percentage of plays ranked, they're 23rd. And they are 29th in the league as far as half-court points per plays. Then when you go over to my defense transition tool, Oklahoma City has been quite a bit better in transition. But then again, they rank 25th as far as the frequency rate in their transition allowed. So it's kind of a win-win here, I feel like, with these Lakers players, because if they set up in the half court, there shouldn't be an issue. If Russell Westbrook wants to push the ball, Oklahoma City's Thunder they've been really not looking too good on defense. So I certainly have a lot of interest in Russell Westbrook. I think more so have interest in Anthony Davis, though. From a price tag aspect, but I mean, I'll be honest, guys, I like both these guys, and I actually think they're a little bit positively correlated because I think we could see a lot of pick and roll in this game, so you get the points for the assists and the points, which typically in NBA DFS isn't the case. Usually if you're playing two guys in the same team, they're kind of negatively correlated because they're taking away from each other's usage. But I think when you take LeBron James out of the equation here, it kind of becomes a two-man show with Westbrook and Anthony Davis. And then the other guy I'm certainly going to be having a lot more interest in is going to be Carmelo Anthony, taking on his former team in the Oklahoma City Thunder. I think his usage should ramp up here. And on DraftKings specifically at his price tag at only 5.3, Carmelo Anthony is grading out as a great play for me tonight. Certainly have quite a bit of interest in him. And the Oklahoma City Thunder rank 28th defensively overall, 18th against his position. Once again, they continue to just not be too good defensively. And on the Oklahoma City side, there are some pretty underpriced guys on their side as well that could certainly have big games. Most notably, Lou Dort at his price tag on DraftKings. He's only 4-4, so I'm certainly going to have some interest in him. And we also have Baisley priced in the same range at 4-6. When we also have my favorite play on the Thunder for his price tag and upside in Josh Giddey. Josh Giddey's producing at a very high rate so far in the season. I was surprised to see it's even higher than I thought, checking my projections as far as his overall DK points per minute on the season so far. Guy's been producing really good. If you're looking at him right here on my sheet, because he's putting up 1.08 DK points per minute, playing plenty of minutes. Going to make a lot of sense as a play for me. He's playing in the mid-30s minutes. And Josh Giddey going to be one of my favorite plays in this game for sure. And then Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, if this game's going to stay close, obviously a lot's going to fall on his shoulders as well. He's just not quite priced as frequent as nicely. And he's priced all the way up to 8-4 now. But, I mean, he could certainly go out there and put up 50 DraftKings points. So Shai Gilgeous-Alexander would be an intriguing play as well. But yeah, that is a little bit of a game-by-game breakdown here, guys. Looking at the chat for any questions I have. This would be a good time to remind you that if you enjoyed the content at any point so far, if you could hit that like button, that'd be greatly appreciated. It's going to help me out. And if you are interested in my premium content, you can check that out, link below in the description. You get access to all my projections. You get direct access to me to ask me questions all the way to lock in the Discord. You get my core plays. And you get all of my tools that are pretty awesome. I got it pulled up on my second monitor here. Half-court putback tool, offense, defense, half-court putback, offense transition, defense transition. You can figure out the best teams in transition offensively, the worst teams in transition defensively, and then obviously figure out the best plays on the slate. And it's all color-coded to make your life easy, so you don't have to be hunting down all these different statistics. Any news on Fantasy Labs? Let's see if we got any news. Pull it up right now for you, Colin. We got John Collins, a game-time decision. That's the latest. So that would be the latest news we're waiting on right now. Like I said, if John Collins is out, that's gonna increase some usage for Danilo Gallinari. We're also probably going to see some more minutes for Solomon Hill at his 3K price tag on DraftKings. Maybe he becomes a little bit of a better play. And we're also waiting on Bogdanovich news on the Atlanta side of things as well, because that's obviously going to shake up some things in the Atlanta rotation for sure. So actually, Atlanta's probably one of the biggest teams here we're waiting on that could really shake some things up here, because that's obviously going to give quite a few more minutes to a few guys. Lou Williams, Kevin Huerter, and Cam Reddish would be three of the guys you're looking to if there's no Bogdanovich. So Lou Will's only 3-1. He's a guy that once he gets the minutes, he'd be an absolute smash play at his price tag. Would certainly like him quite a bit in this one. DeAndre Hunter continues to be a great play at 4K. He'd get more minutes. Kevin Huerter at only 3.9 would become a much better play. Yeah, we would have quite a bit of value here on the Atlanta side if we get confirmation, especially if both of those guys are out. So that's pretty big news we're waiting on for Collins and Bogdanovich. This game starts at 7:30. So my approach would be, if there's guys that you're really, really high on in that first game, no matter what, go ahead and put them in your lineups, but then have some news flexibility in your ability to switch around guys at 7:30. And one thing I said in my video this morning, and one thing I'm saying out loud to remind myself, which I know better, I should know better, and I made a really dumb mistake in one of the last slates. When you're waiting on news like this, guys, and you're filling out your lineups, if you have guys in the first couple games you really like, you want to be putting them in, I'm just putting random guys on my lineup right now, but you want to be putting them in these spots. The very specific spots on DraftKings where the point guard, the shooting guard, the small forward, the power forward, the center, and then you want to leave your guard, forward, and utility spots kind of open for some flexibility, so that when this 7:30 news hits, you have the ability to switch off and put whoever you want in the forward, the guard positions, etc. in those three slots. Because if you go ahead and put someone in the guard and forward spot in the early game, and then you get news on these later games, and you're looking to put them in, and let's say that the guy that you want to switch to that suddenly gets a big boost only has like power forward eligibility. So let's do like a real life example here. So we're waiting on this Atlanta news, right? And we have Bogdanovich listed as questionable. We also talked about how John Collins is now listed as questionable as well. So what's going to happen there is, and for some reason, I'm not seeing John Collins listed here. Am I just missing something? Oh, it's because he's in my lineup. Duh, I clicked on some random guys. But yeah, so John Collins, for example, would be power forward center eligible. So if he's out, Gallinari is going to get a much bigger increase in his role, and he's 3'8", and he's only power forward eligible. So he'd be a good example. If the news comes out and I don't have a power forward slot available, let's say my power forward's locked in and I have another guy in this forward slot, and then I have a utility guy, like it's going to become next to impossible to be able to switch to Gallinari. So you want to keep this guard forward and utility spot open to some flexibility to be able to help you with late news. That's some really good piece of advice that I can give you guys, and that'll go a long way for you when you're building your lineups. Trust me, when you're trying to switch off guys, it's going to make your life easier. You're going to have more flexibility, and you're going to be able to put some more upside in your lineups. So that's certainly a very smart thing to be doing when you're waiting on some news. All right, some questions in the chat. Let's see, what games should we be targeting, Patrick says. Well, I mean, the best game environment by far would be the Utah-Atlanta game based on Vegas data and everything. Like we talked about, these totals have been way down in the early going. But it's a 220 over-under. We're waiting on news for John Collins and Bogdanovich. If those guys are out, that's going to increase some more usage for Gallinari, Kevin Huerter, Cam Reddish, Lou Williams. So that's some big news there. And that would allow us to go lots more stars and scrubs in our builds, because if we find out that both those guys are out, we get all that value. We get Cam Reddish, we get Kevin Huerter, we get Danilo Gallinari. They're all underpriced. And that would just make it a lot easier. And then, of course, we talked about the fact that LeBron James is ruled out already, so that's going to make us want to pay up for Russell Westbrook and Anthony Davis. We know that the Philadelphia 76ers are shorthanded. That's going to make us want to pay up for a Joel Embiid, for instance. So, yeah, my approach right now on this slate is going to be to really try to leave myself some flexibility for that 7:30 game in case we get that news for John Collins and Bogdanovich. And then I'm going to be pivoting my lineups to get some of this value in so that I can pay up for a lot of these studs that we liked with some news. So that'd be my approach to the slate. Make sure you're leaving yourself some flexibility in your lineups for sure. Colin asks, safe to fade the first game entirely, the news we are awaiting. Yeah, so you could. I mean, the first game's the worst game on the slate as far as pace is concerned. It's only a 208 over-under. My concern is if we get some news that Furkan Korkmaz is out, that's going to open up even more usage, and we already have news that on the Philly side, that Tobias Harris, Ben Simmons is continue to be out, and Danny Green continues to be out. So if Furkan Korkmaz is out as well, it's going to make it kind of tough to not want to play some Shake Milton and some Georges Niang at their price tags. Both guys producing at pretty high rates, and both guys continue to be underpriced. And both guys could see like 30-plus minutes. So waiting on that news still. So that's, I mean, sure, you could fade the first game, but there's definitely some guys in that game that I'm going to like, and I could possibly like even more. Josh Richardson just got ruled out. So that's the latest news that we have as far as how that's going to impact this Boston rotation. For Mr. Richardson at 3.7, Dennis Schroeder, Aaron Nesmith will likely see increased run. It's really going to be more so Dennis Schroeder, I would say, that this impacts the most at 5.6 off the bench. Should get a lot more usage in that second unit at 5.6. Very friendly price tag as well. I mean, that's really cheap for Dennis Schroeder coming off the bench. It'd be nice to see him get some more run, though. He hasn't seen the most run in the world. He's only been seeing 21, 26 minutes the last couple times out after seeing low 30s minutes previously. So, but yeah, I think that's a little bit of a bump to Dennis Schroeder here. All right, guys, I kind of already went through all the games, but I'm certainly keeping an eye on the chat. Please ask me any questions that you have. I'll stick around till 6:30. With anything that you guys want to ask. And then if you're interested in some premium content, Check that out. Link below. You get out all my projections. You can ask me questions up till lock. Leave a like on this video if you've enjoyed the live stream. I'm going to continue to try to do these, so the feedback is much appreciated because I need to know if you guys are enjoying this. Otherwise, I can just upload my first video, but quite a few people seem to be liking the live streams, the latest updates, me talking through all these games, so I'm hoping that you're liking it. I can continue to do it, but let me know in the chat and leave a like. And yeah, I'm just waiting on this news, guys. I love the stars and scrubs slate, so hopefully we get some more value. We're able to fit in a bunch of studs. That would make this slate fun. Like I said, we certainly have an opportunity with the Atlanta side of things, so that could make things interesting. Ooh, and we just got some big news. Donovan Mitchell is ruled out. So, that's some big news. That's going to shake things up for sure. Mike Conley is going to become a much better play here on the Utah side of things. He's going to get a big bump. Jordan Clarkson is going to get a big bump. Bogdanovich on Utah. Yeah, so that's our first big news. Mitchell is out. And that's going to definitely shake some stuff up here. So, yeah, we'll see as my projections get updated and everything here, who I'm liking more. But with Donovan Mitchell being out, that's certainly some very big news for us in this one. And that's going to shake some things up. We talked about maybe being able to go stars and scrubs. Now we're going to have even more value here. We're going to get to target Mike Conley, some of these other Jazz guys, if the Atlanta side opens up. So, yeah, guys, this 7:30 game is going to be big for value. And I'd recommend, like we talked about, keep your center guard forward positions open on FanDuel. I know it's a little bit of a different build, but you're going to want to keep your options open. I talked about Mike Conley underpriced as is. Now Mike Conley just becomes an absolute smash play on FanDuel. He's only 5'2". I mean, on DraftKings, I think he's a smash play as well, but on FanDuel, that's just ridiculously cheap. Jordan Clarkson, Mike Conley would be the two guys. They should get a big bump up in usage, big bump up in on-ball handling responsibilities. And then you could see Bogdanovich and Joe Ingles get a little bit as well. Joe Ingles is traditionally a guy that can actually take a little bit of a point guard responsibility on. Ironically, even though he's kind of a wing, they will kind of throw him at the point guard position here and there. So with there being no Donovan Mitchell, that's certainly very, very big news. And definitely going to impact some rotations, some minutes, and some upside for all these guys. So for my Patreon members, certainly be keeping an eye on the projections. Be keeping an eye on my core plays leading up until lock, because we're leading. We're starting to get some value here in this Utah-Atlanta game, and that's going to obviously increase our ability to go stars and scrubs on this slate. Hassan Whiteside's available. Royce O'Neal's available. Just to reiterate, if you watched my video earlier, Hassan Whiteside was my lock of the night. That was because there was some false reporting going on that Rudy Gobert was going to miss with a heel injury. That was actually in regards to Rudy Gay. They came out with an updated injury report and announced that. So Hassan Whiteside is not my lock of the night any longer. Like I said, unfortunately, I kind of already put the video out. It's very rare that happens with a false report. But, you know, if there was news that Rudy Gobert was actually out, taking on this big front court in the Atlanta Hawks, John Collins and Clint Capella, that would make a lot more sense. So, not quite as high on him any longer. So, yeah, guys, we got Mike Conley. Certainly going to like him a lot more. We're waiting on some more news in this one. It's kind of tough because there's definitely some good value in this Philly game, but then there could be some more value opening up in this Atlanta game, and you don't really know if it's going to be open, so that's kind of leaving you a little bit hung out to dry here on the top values of the slate. So you're really going to want to lock in on these 7 and 7:30 games, because that could be the difference here. Like, if we start getting some value with guys like a Lou Williams and a Danilo Gallinari and a Kevin Huerter and a DeAndre Hunter on the Atlanta side of things, because there's no John Collins and no Bogdanovich, you know, that's a big change to the slate. And especially with there being some higher price guys that we want to get in later on the slate now with Anthony Davis and Russell Westbrook, that becomes a lot more prominent here. And certainly going to be interesting. Interesting for sure. And then not to mention, guys, I mean, kind of skimmed over it a little bit, but if there's no Bogdanovich and no John Collins, of course, that's just going to increase the usage for Trae Young. Trae Young's the number one usage guy on this team. Put up 48 DraftKings points last time. Hasn't had the biggest game in the world. If there's ever a game for him to have a big game, this would be it. With all these guys being ruled out, if they do get ruled out, yeah, it's going to make a lot of sense to go to some Trae Young. So let's not sell him short in our projections. So yeah, waiting on some more news. Any more questions, guys? Feel free to please ask them in the chat. Looks like we've got about 15 people in here, 7 likes. If you're enjoying the content, 17 people or so. If you could take a moment to leave that like, that'd be greatly appreciated. It's 2 seconds. It's free. I'll be here all NBA DFS season long, breaking down these slates, help you guys become better NBA DFS players, help you guys win some money. Of course, that's always the goal. Colin asks, Gobert or Wood for a spend up at center? Colin, I don't know what website you're playing on. So if you could tell me, that would help me out a little bit. But for the time being, I'm going to assume you're playing on DraftKings. And my favorite spend-up option at the center position for Rudy Gobert or Christian Wood would be Christian Wood, as I stand right now. Christian Wood should have a lot more usage, a lot more responsibility for keeping the game close. Just think he has more upside. But that's tough because Rudy Gobert's been a pretty good rebounding machine on the season. If John Collins is out, that should make Rudy Gobert's life a little bit easier on the glass as well. So I would say that if John Collins gets ruled out, that might change my perspective on that a little bit. Might change my projections a little bit with his matchup, etc. So certainly be keeping an eye on that news. And hopefully we get some news while I'm live here still, because I want to be able to break this down with you guys. We might not, but I think I've done a pretty good job of covering, who would get the big usage bumps if these guys are ruled out. So we got some news for tomorrow. D'Angelo Russell being out for Friday. That doesn't really help our case for tonight. But yeah, so on FanDuel, just to reiterate, some of these Utah guys are certainly going to be some really good plays now with Donovan Mitchell being out. Mike Conley's only 5'2". Jordan Clarkson's only 5K. Joe Ingles and Bojan Bogdanovic over here as well at only 5'4", 4'4" are going to be much better plays for sure. So FanDuel value is certainly opening up with Donovan Mitchell being out in this one. That's certainly the biggest news we've received so far, next to LeBron James being out. So we have 2 studs being ruled out tonight. And it'll be an interesting thing to see who's going to get the biggest bump up in usage here. But I think we've done a pretty good job of covering it for the most part. And I'm going to do a little bit of a projections update here on my end of things. So maybe we'll get some more clarification on some guys that I'm really high on. But for the most part, I think it's fairly obvious where we're looking based upon the news that does come out. And like I said, I'm going to be doing a little bit of an update on my projections right now. Please feel free to continue asking me questions. Alvin asks, Al Horford on FanDuel, a good play? Yeah, I think he's a decent play. I think that with some of this news coming out, there might be some other guys that I just would rather prioritize over Al Horford. As far as my current projections at 7.9, also, I just think he's priced pretty accurately. However, with that being said, the guy's been really consistent. He's been putting up really good production. He's been in the mid-40s up to like 50 FanDuel points a game. So, of course, that's really good production. That's not going to hurt your feelings at all if he's able to go out there and consistently doing that. Just want to pull up my projections here to give you a more fair analysis. One thing that I continue to say is Robert Williams is grading out as a better play for me on a upside at his price tag aspect. So that would depend on if you're playing cash or a tournament as well. If you're playing tournaments, I would lean to go Robert Williams just because you're looking to get the most amount of upside at their relevant price tag for your tournament lineups. Obviously, you want your guy to go out there and really surpass his price tag in these tournaments. That's what's going to make you get to the top. So Robert Williams at only 6-1 on FanDuel is kind of that guy for me, whereas Al Horford's priced pretty fairly. So tough to be saying with 100% confidence I'd rather go to Robert Williams because clearly Al Horford's taking away from his production. Al Horford's been really good. Al Horford's being more consistent. Al Horford's getting the big minutes. But the fact of the matter is, I'm, as a tournament player, looking for the guy that can really surpass his price tag, and Robert Williams is that guy. If you're playing cash games, however, my stance would change on that, and I would be leaning a lot more stronger towards the Al Horford side of things, similar to what you just asked in playing Al Horford. So, all right, guys, continue to ask your questions. I'm doing a little bit of a projections update here to give you guys some updates. If you are interested in my premium content, I would highly recommend it. If you're getting very serious about NBA DFS, if you're playing NBA DFS every night and you don't have my premium package, I really think you're missing out. So click the link below, patreon.com/KJK_DFS. I think you're really going to like it. If you don't, and you want to cancel after your first month, you can do that. But I just don't think that's going to be the case. I think you're going to be happy. I'm getting consistent, really good feedback from my Patreons about performing pretty well here in the early going. Let's see if we have any news here. Nope, still waiting on some news. So yeah, let's see. I'm going to continue to upgrade my projections here. Donovan Mitchell news obviously being big. That's going to impact the rotation quite a bit with Donovan Mitchell being ruled out. Mike Conley becomes an absolute smash play. I would prioritize getting Mike Conley in your lineups with there being no Donovan Mitchell. That's a big piece of news. Jordan Clarkson, Joe Ingles also going to be seeing more on-ball usage. And yeah, guys, that's a big piece of news. So let's go ahead and upgrade my projections here. I'll be live for about 10 more minutes, so I'll try to give you guys some insight as to, you know, where I'm looking, biggest changes in my projections, all of that fun stuff. With this Donovan Mitchell news obviously being a big piece of news, I'm certain that there's going to be plenty of stuff that changes here for me. And we will find out shortly in the process of updating. So let me know if you have any questions. If you're enjoying the content, take a moment to leave that like video. We got like on the video. We got like 19 people in here. There's only 9 likes. So I know there's a couple of you that haven't hit that like button yet. If you could do that, that'd be greatly appreciated. And like I said, I'm about to update these projections and give you guys some insight as to where we're looking on this slate. I think we already have kind of an idea, but we're going to get a final confirmation here on some of these guys that are really popping for me. Patrick says, I love being a Patreon member. Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate it, man. I'm glad that you're liking it. I'm going to continue to work hard on this to provide you with some value. I appreciate your support. And let's see. All right, we got some projections upgraded here with the Donovan Mitchell news on DraftKings. Doing a little refresh here. Let's see. Yeah, Mike Conley. Obviously, I said it, but after this run, it's very apparent that Mike Conley is just an absolute smash play at his price tag on both websites, especially FanDuel, but on DraftKings too at 6-3. Mike Conley really popping. Let's see my FanDuel projections for Mr. Conley. Yeah, Mike Conley is my #1 play now on FanDuel. As far as his upside at his price tag. So make sure that you are getting Mike Conley in both on your lineups on both websites. But if you're playing FanDuel, Mike Conley is just an absolute lock for me tonight. He's too cheap. He's not my #1 play on FanDuel. So yeah, if you're playing FanDuel and you don't have Mike Conley in your lineups, you're doing it wrong. In my professional opinion. Got him projected for like 37 FanDuel points. He's only 5'2". So I'm certainly going to like me some Mike Conley tonight for sure. I like him on both websites, but specifically on FanDuel, really going to like him, guys. So make sure that you're getting some Mike Conley in your lineups. How do you like Jeremiah Grant tonight, Drew Elvick asks. So, Drew, I like him, but the thing is, with all this news coming out and this value and stuff, I kind of get the impression we're not going to have to go there. That could maybe make you different, but it's the slowest paced game on the slate. Like, that game has a really low total. Only a 208 over under. I tend to think I'd probably want to be locking in on the Philadelphia side of things where they're a little bit more shorthanded, and or Cade Cunningham on the cheaper end of things in that game because he's just too cheap. But even with that being said, we're getting some more value possibly on the Atlanta side. So I don't really think that Jeremiah Grant's where I'll be looking tonight. I just think there's going to be some better values. You know, why would you play him when we just got confirmation that Donovan Mitchell's going to be out? So now we're getting usage increase to Mike Conley, Bojan Bogdanovic, Jordan Clarkson, Joe Ingles. You know, I feel like it'd probably be smarter of you to be playing these guys in the highest up-tempo game on the slate in a 220 total with there being no Donovan Mitchell. You know, that makes a lot more sense to me than going to Grant, who's in the slowest pace game on the slate. Their team's pretty healthy. He's not really getting the biggest usage bump. And he is much more efficiently priced for what we were expecting coming into the slate, whereas with the news with Donovan Mitchell being out, the pricing on these Utah guys isn't quite as sharp. So, yeah, man, I don't know if I'd necessarily be going to Grant tonight. I think I'd be making some changes to your lineups based upon the news that we've been receiving. So that's where I would approach there. All right, guys, it's 6:22 p.m. Eastern Time. We got about 8 more minutes. Feel free to leave any and all questions in the chat. Like I said, as far as some of my favorite guys on this slate, certainly liking these Utah Jazz guys a lot more. Jordan Clarkson, Joe Ingles, Mike Conley. These guys certainly all popping on FanDuel specifically at their cheap price tags. Then when I go over to DraftKings, though, it's kind of the same story. Jordan Clarkson, Mike Conley, certainly going to be my 2 favorite options. Based on the fact that there is no Donovan Mitchell, they should get a lot more on-ball responsibility as far as Mr. Conley and Jordan Clarkson. Jordan Clarkson coming off the bench as a 6th man. He's going to have all the on-ball handling responsibilities when he comes into the game. Mike Conley is the starting point guard. He's going to have all the all-ball handling responsibilities when he's in the game. So Jordan Clarkson and Mike Conley both looking like very friendly plays to me tonight with there being no Donovan Mitchell in this game. Certainly going to like both of them. I'd be prioritizing them in your lineups. Carmelo Anthony looking like a pretty sharp play as well, with there being no LeBron James at his respective price tag on DraftKings specifically. Talked about Cade Cunningham in that first game at his 4K price tag on DraftKings. I like him quite a bit. And we're waiting on that Atlanta news, guys. That's big news. If anyone has any sort of update for me in the chat, I don't think anything's come out yet, though. Yep, we're still waiting on it. So if you're just joining the stream, the Atlanta side, we're waiting on John Collins and Bogdan Bogdanovic. If they're out, look for Lou Williams, Kevin Huerter, Cam Reddish, DeAndre Hunter to see more minutes, more usage. And that's certainly very big news. So, yeah, I'd be leaving yourself some flexibility for that 7:30 news, guys. That's big time. So, all right, we got 5 minutes, guys. Please ask any and all questions in the chat. I'm not seeing anything else coming up so far. If that's the case, I'll probably bounce out the door here because I have to update my projections, update my core plays, answer all the questions in my Discord chat for my Patreon members, and build my own lineups. Lastly, I got to build my own lineups as well. Fernando says, give me 3 picks for FanDuel. Well, I don't know what kind of game you're playing. I don't know if you're playing tournaments or cash games or what, but I can certainly give you 3 picks. My number 1 play on FanDuel tonight is going to be Mike Conley at 5.2. There's no Donovan Mitchell. He's way underpriced. He's very easy to put in your lineup. So Mike Conley's 1 pick. My second pick would be Russell Westbrook at 9.2 on FanDuel. There's no LeBron James, so Russell Westbrook's upside should go way up in this one. He has point guard and shooting guard eligibility as well, so should be able to fit him in your lineup pretty easily. And my third pick would be Jordan Clarkson at only 5K on FanDuel. Once again, Donovan Mitchell being ruled out. I think he's going to get a big bump up in usage, and he's also way underpriced on FanDuel. So there's 3 picks for you on FanDuel. And if you could leave a like on the video, guys, we got 17, 18 people in here, 12 likes. If you're joining in, you're enjoying the content, leave a like. That'd be greatly appreciated. And yeah. Trae Young grading out as a much better play if we get some news that this Atlanta side is dealing with some shorthanded stuff as well. So that's certainly big news. Colin asks, Russ, AD, Conley, Clarkson, KJ Martin, locks, question mark. Yeah, Colin, I know you're playing on DraftKings, so I like those guys. Yeah, I like all those guys. Locks, you know, lock means you're playing them in 100% of your lineup. So I don't know if this is, the context is important, guys. Like, I don't know what you're playing. If you play tournaments, if you're playing a large field tournament, if you're trying to get different, you know, this is all stuff. There's no such thing as a lock. Outside of probably cash games, like my biggest lock on this slate is Mike Conley on FanDuel specifically. Like I said, Mike Conley is my number 1 play on FanDuel. He's only 5,200. If you get my Patreon, you can check out my projections. I use a multiplier feature. I've been talking about this. Makes it pretty simple. It can get you different in your lineups. If you might hear guys across the industry talk about guys like 6xing, 5xing, 7xing their salary. Right now, I've got Mike Conley projected to 7.1x his salary on FanDuel. So that's big time in your tournaments. That's some big time upside. I like Mike Conley a bunch. Do you like Josh Giddey? Fernando asks. Yeah, I do like Josh Giddey. If you're just joining into the stream, I talked about him earlier. I certainly do like him quite a bit. He's been producing at a very high rate at only 5.8 on DraftKings. I don't know if you're playing DraftKings or FanDuel, but we're talking about on DraftKings specifically at only 5.8. If you look at Giddey's stats on the season, he's putting up 1.08 DK points per minute. That's over a 7-game sample size, 201 minutes. That's very impressive fantasy point per minute production, and I certainly do like Josh Giddey. Jalen asks, how do you feel about Saguon from Houston? Yeah, I talked about him earlier too. I like him quite a bit, especially if this game turns into a blowout. KJ Martin and Saguon are 2 of my guys that are popping as pretty good plays for me at 4-1 for Sagan. And then as far as KJ Martin, he's 3-6. This game does have a pretty large spread with a 10.5 point spread in favor of the Phoenix Suns. So if it does turn into a blowout, I would say that both those guys at the bench are going to see even more run. They're both cheap. They both could really certainly reach their ceiling at their respective price tags. So both KJ Martin and Saguon in this game, if this turns into a blowout specifically, I do think could certainly have very big games tonight. And yeah, I'm certainly high on them for sure. So I'd have no issues with you going to them in your lineups. See if we have any more news before I head out here. Finish up my final projection runs. Answer some questions in the Discord chat. Make my lineups. We got nothing so far. All right. Colin says, thanks for the live stream, KJK. Good luck tonight. Let's get these takedowns. Yes, sir, Colin. Thank you for tuning in, man. Appreciate you. Best of luck tonight, guys. I'm going to head out the door. If you enjoyed this live stream, if you could take 1 second to leave a like, that'd be greatly appreciated. I'm going to try to do these as much as possible. I think we've done them 3 days in a row now. So with my work schedule and everything, it's not possible to necessarily do them every night, especially on Monday nights. I know I'm not going to be able to, unfortunately, but I'm going to do this as much as possible, guys. I got a lot of stuff going on, but I always put the most amount of effort into providing you guys with as much content as possible and the most valuable content I can. So leave a like. Wish you guys all the best of luck tonight. Make sure that you're locked into that 7:30 news for that Utah-Atlanta game. We're waiting on some John Collins, some Bogdanovich news, so make sure you're keeping an eye on that. And yeah, guys, I'm out of here. Wish you guys all the best of luck tonight, and peace.